So I'm Jessie-Jamz Ozaeta. I also go by the moniker Lil Lonely, which originally started as my rap artist name, and then eventually morphed into onto like a larger, ongoing, adulterated mess, you could say. My overall stylistic choices in my work revolves around fictional storytelling, pop music, dark humor, and satire. In a lot of ways, these methods help in building what I view as a facade of myself. Um, like a lot like internet trolls. Oh, I think my video went down. Can you still hear me? Okay,
We
that's weird.
can hear you, but we lost your video.
Oh, can you see me now? So I come mainly from a musical background. Before the Little Lonely project, I played in a hardcore punk band and produced some electronic and hip hop music. When I did finally start getting a little more serious in the goal of becoming a famous rapper, I mean, like clearly it worked, right? I was heavily like inspired by the kind of innovative vision of the innovative vision, production, and like audiovisual storytelling of rap and hip hop music videos. And because I don't have the social skills and the means to collaborate with more talented artists to produce visuals for me, uh, like which is probably more the social skills that I lacked, I decided to dive into making my own music, my own music video. Sorry, starting with a toy version of myself. I'm not a toy. Shut up, you are. And eventually a 3D version of myself. Here, so I'm gonna show you. I'm gonna screen share a few music videos. At least you got the SoundCloud version. So do you see it now?
Yes, yes.
Perfect. Thanks. Okay, I hope that was loud and clear and the frame rate is okay. Thanks. I'll start a screen share on my Google Slides. Okay, hope you can see that. Ooh. Okay, right. So Lil Lonely, this guy, is a character. Ever since the inception of my pursuing of this failed rap career, I've always wanted to represent my persona more satirically, but with a genuine sense of humility and self-awareness. Um, at least I hope I'm doing that. The popular notions of drugs, money, sex, and politics in rap and hip hop music isn't something I feel comfortable speaking about lyrically. So I approached my earlier songs with self-deprecating parody, um, making fun of my own naive aspirations, which eventually turned into an interesting study of my own ego, narcissism, dishonesties, and hypocrisies. This is echoed in my first EP, which is entitled Dishonest. So with this in mind, the whole Lil Lonely project evolved into a more uh, grander audiovisual product in which I try to integrate fictional storytelling that all comes back to both criticize and embrace aspects of myself. So the project I'm presenting today, which is entitled Narcissus as Narcosis, does go hand in hand with the Lil Lonely universe. Though in here, I'm diving into questioning the more organic existence and transcendence of human condition and the psyche in digital space. Lil Lonely is an unapologetically blatant extension of myself, which I've always seen here by the lovely works of our previous presenters today, is a common theme surrounding notions of alternative fiction, world building, and various representations of the body in cyberspace. All right. This is a little screenshot of the models of my current work that I'm about to present. I am just going to stop the screen share and share another video. All right, I hope that you can see that. So this is going to play silently while I talk. This is just a sped up version of the short film. So in my case, the character of Lil Lonely is a protagonist in a digital universe that I perceive as quite alienated and lonely, which is kind of where I got the name. And it's a version of reality that is both distorted and uncanny. So in addition, to tie back into today's theme of violence and trauma, I'm also interested in the depiction of a digital body being subject to a variety of emotional reactions to things like distortion, disfigurement, and mutilation as a sort of purgatorial atonement, you could say, for my narcissism and ego. So I'm basically saying I'm making fun of myself. That's pretty much my practice. So back to the project, the title Narcissus as Narcosis, Narcissus as Narcosis, sorry, is a direct reference to our Lord and Savior, Marshall McLuhan, who compared our interaction with technology to the Greek myth of Narcissus. For those who don't know, he's the dumbass that drowned by being so fascinated with himself, and that's exactly what I'm doing. Though in my case, I'm kind of also mixing my storytelling with aspects of the myth of Prometheus, and also Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, and also the Freudian conceptions of ego. Because the work is ongoing, it isn't limited to a single piece or artwork, but more of a variety of short audiovisual vignettes that show my character's experience in cyberspace. I do, however, have a centerpiece that ties everything together by user interaction in the form of an installation that uses an ultrasound sensor and the programming software Max MSP. I'll show that to you right now.
My name is Jessie-Jamz Ozaeta. I was born on December 19th, 1992 in Montreal, Canada. However, I began to come into existence in cyberspace, albeit slowly, in the early 2000s. James has been observing our simulation alien very closely. He loves to give me haircuts and tends to render my physique as flawless in contrast to his own image. Some say we look and act very much alike. However, I believe that I am much more complex and sophisticated than he is. I am charming and eternal, while he is vulnerable and disposable. James believes that I am a direct product of his narcissism and ego. I'll admit that he has grown to be quite addicted and infatuated by my presence, maybe even jealous, and I am proud to reveal that I no longer serve him. In fact, the tables have turned as he is beginning to model and extend himself after me.
So I'll talk a little bit over this more technical, just kind of a little not real time, like just sped up version of my process, the way I built this thing. So this interactive piece was solely meant to be about me and my experience with digital space and cyber art. And I know it sounds a little bit pretentious, but in the future, I do really wish to someday implement other faces and bodies to create a larger sense of relatability apart from my face. But I'm a little too egotistical for that for now, I think. I'm gonna stop this screen share. Come back to this. All right. Hope you see that. I think you do, right? Okay, I think you do. Do you? Do you okay, cool. Okay, sorry. There you go. So the language of 3D media in general has allowed me to experiment and process ways of kind of bringing a dialogue between organic existence and virtual space. The usual methods and techniques used in that are generally used in 3D art involve the use of texture mapping and unwrapping, which Basim mentioned earlier, and also lighting to render a feature of photorealism to either an object or a character. The notion of appropriating from the real world to the digital and vice versa is, to me, extremely intriguing. And it also touches my driving questions about the virtual projections of the self. So about the idea of narcosis, my practice is just a huge exercise on and study of how I obsessively interact with cyberspace. Like avatars, which is mentioned by our first presenters. Like avatars are the characters we create in video games, in The Sims or in Second Life, for instance. I believe digital space can reveal a lot about our own aspirations, goals, or worldviews. The manners that we input fragments of our human qualities as a sort of obsessive simulation is fascinatingly close to the idea of a God complex. I'm sure many of you have played Roller Coaster Tycoon, can relate to. The facades contain an inherent aspect of domestication, where our interactivity with them is characteristic to a form of, it's a good word, cultivation and taming, just like toys. Not a toy. This segues into a physical comparison, physical companion piece to the whole Narcissus as Narcosis installation, which I call Narcissus as Neurosis. And it's a sculpture piece. And while the prior video, video installation deals more thematically with notions of numbness, numbness through the use of technology and digital space as a formation of a facade. This piece that I'm about to show conveys more Freudian themes of obsession. If I can just successfully open that in a second. So yeah, I'm a god. Anyway, so this idea of something cyclical and obsessive is something I wanted to portray with this sculpture, where that version of me is in a perpetual state of psychological distress and trauma, and also in a state of unconscious conflict. What I mean by that is kind of like this feedback loop of personality disorders and also anxieties or traumas that stem from the obsession of what I see is an idealized self-image, which unfortunately, ultimately can render someone in a state of neediness and codependency, like my little friend right here. So yeah, when I create a repeated image of myself, whether it takes form as a 3D character or a sculpture or a toy, I'm ultimately showing a version of me that both reflects and criticizes my narcissistic habits in hopefully the most sincerest way to project any sort of humility. Uh, you could say it's a really chaotic junction and playground between reality and fiction. And yeah, the Little Lonely universe I wish to really convey is just this an alternative fiction. So yeah, thanks.
Thank you, Jessie and Little Lonely.
Sorry, who you're talking about?
I said, thank you, Jessie and Little. Oh.
Who's Little Lonely? I'm sorry.
Let's see if there's any questions from the participants for Jessie or Little Lonely.
Well, if I may add something to Jessie, I mean, I don't know. I mean, my background is literature, but I did want to ask you a little bit about the Freudian aspects of your work and how, how you said it was about the ego and Narcissus, right? As more or less the theme of all your constructions, whether, in the virtual space or more like with the material. And I just wondered, I guess if that is such as the theme, right? If it's like, okay, so but you're not deconstructing the I. I mean, you're not saying that, oh, there's a fragmentation of the ego, or like my body is part of other bodies. You're not, right? Like you're still always within the theme of Narcissus, and then you don't go around it, or you don't think, oh, well, I'm part of a larger whole. Like it's always enclosed with it. In other words, there's not a critique of Freud in your work, it seems like. And I wonder if you could address that.
Yeah, no, there's definitely. I'm just kind of using Freud's notion of ego because it's just very iconic and let's say, what's the word? Like layman way of viewing just like different levels of ourself in a way. So, and a lot like what Adrian Rosa mentioned earlier too about the ego. Mine is actually really similar to hers, where I didn't necessarily talk about this in the presentation, but this fellow here, I would say, is my id. He's not that smart. I'm the normal ego, and I think the 3D versions of myself are the super ego. That's just the way it is right now, and I kind of just play around with diving into different parts of it where I lower myself in some way, or I try to seem more intellectual through my 3D models. But all in all, it just comes back to making fun of the way I view things. I don't know if that answered your question.
Yeah, I guess it does. It's just I wonder just that is it a critique of Narcissus, or is this like a or is it really a systematization of Narcissus with, through different guises?
I I mean, it's definitely a critique of the myth, because I think the myth is his death was so preventable,
Uh-huh.
but he was just so caught up with his own ego. And that's my fear. That's actually my biggest fear as a person or as an artist, is uh, to just, be an asshole, I guess, in a lot of ways, due to my narcissism. So uh, again, I don't know if this answers your question. This is my work is all revolves around just like um, making fun of um, my narcissistic tendencies, but I also mentioned the idea of like a cyberspace being a purgatory for my atonement for my sins, you could say, for my narcissistic sins. So yeah, everything I try to do in the end of the day is just kind of making fun of myself.
Yeah, I guess just the only thing I would add, just that, I mean, I don't remember exactly how the story goes, but there's more to Narcissus that's just being in love with himself. I think it's got to do with desire. He loved someone. I can't remember the exact story, but or how it went down, but I don't know.
Yeah.
I just felt like you could explore more the theme by going around there, even subverting it a little bit, so that maybe you can I don't know,
Mhm.
sort of work within it, but also so that you can go into different directions with your work. Because if you sometimes the fear I have myself with my own work as well is that when I get caught up with an idea, maybe I'm leaving things out that might help me in the future, just go in another direction, or
Mhm.
just take my work elsewhere, and not just, I don't know, just I don't want you to be fixated on flagellation, or oh my gosh, I'm narcissistic. It's like, well, we are all narcissistic to a certain extent. We all have an ego, and we all have to deal with it. So I mean, that's all I meant to say. Just
Oh,
be easy on yourself.
yeah, thanks a lot for that feedback.
Mhm.
Um, uh, yeah, like there is a slightly deeper. Maybe I haven't really explained it properly in my presentation, but I am maybe not the more not the whole fictional myth story side of the myth of Narcissus. I don't really focus on that. I just focus on kind of like the main, uh, summary of what happened. But like this idea, if I relate it back to what Marshall McLuhan said about how he views that myth being a representation of our numbness, hence the word narcosis, to the way we interact with technology. In a way, the fact that I'm making these different avatars of myself it's both pro and con, where as much as I have a self-aware idea that I want to make fun of myself, I'm also kind of shooting myself in the foot by doing this so much, and I'm becoming numb to it. So it's this kind of like endless battle that's also self-destructive, but also in a way that can make me see things in a different perspective, I think.
Right. Yeah, that's always a bind, right? Like just yeah.
Yeah.
Jesse, I think there's also that disembodiment that allows you to have your avatar wither in the sun as it's crawling. And, are you feeling any kind of remorse for killing off your avatar in that particular space? Do you feel anything for that avatar when you view that?
Yeah, I think I do. Like it in a way, because I kind of use more like a kind of sometimes graphic or gorier aspect on my models. Sometimes, yeah, I can feel the pain in some way, but I purposely put them there to just suffer in a way, because I caught myself being narcissistic, for example. Uh, but if I think about it more and more, it's like this is not that. It's not the most healthiest approach, but it's a different and more creative approach, I guess, to dealing with that, quote unquote trauma, I'd say.
Do you feel numb to it because of the technology that you're working with, or from what you've been exposed to just in life and experience that you see in the culture that you're referencing.
Sorry, what was the first part, Adrian was?
Are you, feeling disconnected because it's being created within the computer realm, or because of what you've been exposed to, via pop culture and or movies, whatever it is that shaped your representations?
Yeah, I don't feel necessarily entirely disconnected. In fact, I want to be more connected to it somehow. Uh, I see it more of as like a hyper exaggeration version. Well, all these versions are hyper representations of my real life, for example. Um, yeah, but I don't necessarily want to be disconnected. I maybe in a way that since I'm showing hyper realistic, hyper versions of myself, there is definitely a disconnect because, for example, I don't have as much money as this guy. So
I understand that
yeah,
completely.
I mean, he clearly has way more followers than I do. And yeah, like I think at the end goal, like I really don't wanna cut the what connects me to my avatars, for example, because there's always that fragment of myself and the way I think in them anyway. I guess maybe in a more, if you come back to the idea of meditation or rehabilitation somehow, maybe in 100 years from now, if I live that long, I'll be wise enough to completely disconnect from all of these. But for now, I still feel very rooted in them.
I think I could relate to, when my avatar was first in Second Life, this guy was trying to hit on me and take me on a date, and like all of a sudden he like wanted to have sex with my avatar, and I was like, wait, like I'm a virtual virgin, like I don't know if I want to lose my virginity to this dude. And feeling some sort of responsibility, I guess, for the decisions that your avatar will, that you'll view your avatar going through, seems like something that's common between us. One other thing I just want to say is that video where you're having a conversation with the creation of yourself. I love all the pieces, but I really love that particular moment. And I think that happens a lot in pop culture and science fiction, where there are like invasions of the body snatchers, the bionic woman, even in the Stepford Wives, where there's a confrontation between the actual real and the robotic and or recreated version. And I think that piece was so cleverly done. You could hear that inner dialogue. And that particular moment was like it for me, just bringing everything together that you're doing. I think that was amazing.
No, am I mute? Oh no. Yeah, thank you for that. And I also think we can relate a lot. We can relate a lot together too, because I also really am a big fan of like science fiction films and film in general. So yeah, I'm glad you related to that part. And yeah, I think a lot of also, I guess it's the more parody and humor side that I approach the way I produce things in general. I always wanted to be confrontational, but in a comedic way. But then again, it reveals, my inner, psychological confrontations that I have with myself.
But we also see the physical manifestation of it too, which I think is awesome.
Yeah, for sure. Like he has a six-pack, I don't.
We'll have to take your word for it.
I have oh, there's a question from Arya.
Yeah, there is a question from Arya. I can read it for you, Jesse. The reproduction of your image is quite consistent in different iterations you've shown. Are you also considering different kinds of associations when it comes to the representation of your narcissistic tendency?
Yeah, like the way I make the different avatars of myself, including the doll, is very how I am now physically. So I gave him a haircut yesterday because I shaved my head. But normally, as you've seen in the other videos, he has glasses and hair, which was my previous style before I shaved my head. Also, the color yellow is a very thing, a very kind of just a color theme that I like always putting out there. So I like this idea of iconography that I really want to push, because if I want to remain consistent with the way I want it to be very identifiable at the end without my actual face being there where people won't recognize me. Um, so yeah, and also Aria, to answer your question too, like for now it's still rooted to be very much me now. But like I said earlier, I do wish to incorporate different faces or bodies. I just don't know how yet. Um, and I guess that just goes on with time, just me being more wise about how I think and how I view the world, or yeah.
Thank you, Jessie, and thank you, Arya, for that question. Jessie, that was a great presentation. Thank you so much. We're going back to Massa's question from a little while ago, but this question applies to everybody, so maybe any of the artists can answer this.
It's Yvette's question from everyone, I think.
Yvette, here we go. My question I would ask everyone is whether, where, and how do you differentiate between artworks and technologies?
I mean, I want to take a swipe at that. I would just say, bringing the idea of will, the will of the artist, I think it's really a matter of treating the material that you use as a medium. So, for example, when I was starting to use augmented reality, because I'd never used it before, I noticed there was a lot of kind of product-driven uses of it, or these sort of like a priori kind of biased aesthetic uses of it. And I wanted to not look at any of that stuff and kind of just approach it the way I was approaching my pens or my paper, which is it's a medium in which you're kind of channeling your practice through. So it's funny because technology with regard to art used to be photography, or used to be video, or used to be even a paintbrush. So I just think it's a way, it's not necessarily a bifurcation, because everything an artist uses in some way is a technology. So.
I think for me, I think two main ways that artists who say they work between art and technology use those two things is that sometimes the artwork is an exploration of how a technology works, and sometimes it deploys an actual new technology. And I mean, for me, I think it's most interesting when it does both. But I think on my end, I've been more focused on exploring how a technology is used outside of the artwork. And then sometimes the artwork itself is not very high tech, at least for the way I work. Sometimes it's just an ordinary film or a physical sculpture, but it will be it will come from more of an exploration of generally how a technology is used and how it distributes work, or it governs bodies, or distributes value. So yeah, that's how I would answer to that.
I mean, for me, it's kind of asking me to differentiate between the camera and the photographer, or the paintbrush and the painting, or, I see it as an extension and or as a vehicle. And, I guess when I'm working with whatever the medium or material is, in my realm, it's sort of equivalent to a meditative state where we become one. So I don't try to differentiate between anything when I'm in that space. Maybe after thinking about it later if I wanted to, but I just see it all, you know, as one at that time and space.
Yeah, for my case, honestly, I'm ditto to you, Agent Rose, because that's yeah, more or less what I was thinking as well. Though to me, my practice is very in the now. So I guess I'm evolving with every time I use different technologies, like the 3D software. I'm still learning how to use it every day. So that affects the artwork, and the artwork will also affect the way I use the technology. So yeah, that's the way I see it.
Thank you, everybody. And then I have one more question for all three of you. How can the creation of these bodies help us understand ourselves as humans?
Yeah, like pretty much kind of what I mentioned earlier. The way I approach these formations of these bodies are very escapist, but more importantly self-critical in both a negative but also hopefully a more positive sense. Um, I don't even know if that answered the question, to be honest.
I mean, I agree with you, Jessie, as well. Like, we're embodying those avatars, but we're also collecting all of this research content experience and then extracting it and analyzing it. And within the process of all of that, analyzing ourselves and, you know, who we are. Like, I come from the aspect of, if you don't truly know yourself, what else do you truly know? So in order for me to really grapple and understand everybody else, I need to understand myself and my function in this time, space, and place in this particular body, which happens to be human to you right now, but who knows, in another alternate time, space, place that's existing at the same time, that, you know, I am something other than what you see right now.
Yeah, you put it even better than I did. Thanks.
I mean, and my physical representation here today as Maria.
Represent, Adrian.
All right. And with that, I'm going to finish our presentation series. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Thanks to all of our artists and their fascinating presentations. Stay tuned for more information coming up. Thank you.
Thank you all. It's been an amazing experience to hear, know, and see everything that you're passionate and learning about.
Thank you for an object.